Hi, I'm Dylan Cox and this is my Sunday results wrap-up. So last night in Germany, WBO Cruiserweight champion Marco Huck put on a fine display in stopping Arslan in 6. He had beaten Arslan just 2 fights ago in 2012 by a unanimous decision, but a close fight that was. Arslan came again, tried to put the fight on Huck, but Huck responded in kind, got some nice shots off, managed to drop his man in the 6. As soon as he smelt blood, he went for it. It was a little bit pedestrian at times, the fight, but these guys are cruiserweights. It was a few punches, high guard, few punches, high guard, but he did explode into life in the 6, Huck, and he dropped his man once. Arslan got back up on wobbly legs. Much credit to him for continuing to press forward, but Huck landed a beautiful right hand and then managed to drop him again. Referee steps in, waves the contest off. Arslan on his feet, but not complaining about that. Huck, he is going for a record number of defences of that WBO title. He's going to be going for Johnny Nelson's record. I can't remember if it was 16 or 13 defences Nelson had. But Huck looked in good form. I mean, he had a tough fight against Afolabi last, and it was Arslan before that. He'd also fought Povetkin up at heavyweight. I mean, I don't know how much Huck's going to have left. He's put on some brave performances in recent years. He's a great fighter and a very, very honest fighting man. On the undercard, we had British heavyweight David Price making his return to the ring following 2 back-to-back losses against American Tony Thompson last year. We had a late-minute change of opponent for Price. He ended up facing Istvan Rzinski, an unknown and unheralded heavyweight, but he did the job on him, a body shot, dropping him after 2 minutes of the fight, knockout, makes his comeback a good one. He's in there now with Sauerland event. They're going to be putting him on plenty of shows this year, I'm sure, and it's good for Price to have that win, that mental victory as well, to know that he's back in the ring, he's got a knockout under his belt and he can push on. WBO junior lightweight champion Mikey Garcia, trained by the famous Robert Garcia over there in Oxnard, California, fought last night and successfully defended his title in New York at the Madison Square Gardens Theatre against one Carlos Burgos. It was a typical slow start from Garcia. He got heavily staggered by a left hook by Burgos in the second round, but came back with a great round 3 and staggered his man with a right hand and then cruised it out to a unanimous points decision, and quite a wide points decision. Afterwards, Gamboa was in the ring there calling out Garcia, and that's a good fight I'd like to see. Gamboa sort of bubbled on and off over the last few years, but still a good fight there, junior lightweight. On the undercard, heavyweight hope Bryant Jennings kept his unbeaten record intact by stopping Artur Spiltzka in 10. He dropped his man in the 6th and in the 10th, then the referee waded in and called the fight off. Jennings wasn't completely happy with his performance. I mean, he doesn't look like the saviour of the heavyweight division by a long shot. He's not a bad fighter, but he'll be happy to move on with the win. In his hometown of Washington, D.C. last night, Lamont Peterson successfully defended his IBF junior welterweight champion. Yes, he is a junior welterweight champion still, even though, you know, he lost to Matisse, although the weight was, you know, not out like welterweight. Anyway, he managed to defend his title against Thierry Jean by a unanimous decision last night. First 4 rounds, not much between them. Jean then came back into the fight, rounds 4 to 7, I think it was. And then after that, Peterson put his foot on the gas. He retains his title, still, you know, really haunted by that loss at the hands of Matisse, where he was blasted out last year. And he's still going to be rebuilding to a certain extent. But it was a good victory over a decent, solid opponent for Peterson. And let's see where he goes next in the light welterweight division. I wouldn't be surprised if Garcia can't get a big fight next. He wouldn't just take on Peterson for that belt. So that's most of the big fights covered from last night. Lots of news in boxing this week. Obviously, things are starting to heat up now. We've had a couple of weeks where it's just a few little fights going on, not much news, but now we're starting to get the big, juicy stuff. April 12th, Manny Pacquiao will be back in the ring against his former conqueror, Timothy Bradley Jr. Timothy Bradley coming off a decent 2013 where he had that fight of the year against Provodnikov, and then he beat one Manuel Marquez, and Pacquiao coming off the back of that Rios victory, but with the Bradley loss still fresh in his mind and the Marquez loss still there as well. So if he gets to avenge Bradley, maybe we'll see another fight with Marquez. I think, as a lot of people thought, Manny Pacquiao was unfortunate in his last fight against Bradley, and a lot of people wondered what the judges were seeing, and we'll see now if Pacquiao can right that fight. It looks like if both men come through their clash in February, CHISORA and Fury is going to be on. There's a press conference in London tomorrow. I'm hoping to get to it. If I'm not going to be there, second that, I'll definitely cover it, and we'll have exclusive interviews with Tyson and Derek Chisora. That fight looks like it's going to be set for June or May, perhaps in a big stadium in this summer. It's going to be a very interesting rematch between the two guys. Some people are saying, what's the point in them rematching? Well, they're a little bit further down their career. There's a lot more at stake for both guys now. Chisora clearly more motivated than he was last time he fought Fury, and Fury got a lot to prove, having that disappointment of 2 hay fights falling through. Talked earlier about Gamboa versus Garcia. Well, also Gamboa and Garcia's stablemate Brandon Rios had a lot of interaction on Twitter recently. That's another good fight I'd like to see. Maybe Rios a bit too big for Gamboa. Rios should really be looking at some welterweight fights now, but it was still an interesting dialogue. We also had George Groves and Carl Froch going at it through various different channels. Now we're talking about, is that fight going to happen? Because Carl Froch is looking like, and he released a statement to this effect, that he's going to be facing Chavez. Still saying that Groves is in the picture for a fight this year, but not immediately perhaps. Groves turned down a 7-figure offer. You're talking about over £1 million for the rematch, way more than he got for the first fight. But it wasn't necessarily that was the issue for Groves. I think there was some stipulations in the contract. I think also it was the split and how much Froch was getting in proportion to how much Groves was getting. He feels he deserves more. If that goes to a purse bid, I think it's something like 85-15 or 75-25. And I mean, that's, you know, a lot less of a payday for Groves. So, you know, he's managed to turn the screw a little bit with the IBF. They've made Carl Froch have to defend his IBF title within 90 days against Groves, otherwise he faces getting stripped. You've all seen this in the news. So we're going to see what Groves does. If he ditches the title, Groves wins a vacant version of the title. Say Froch loses to Chavez, he might then have to go knocking on the door of George Groves to win back a world title. I don't think Froch versus Chavez is a good fight, by the way. I think that is an absolutely cynical money-making fight for Carl Froch. It's a typical sort of Eddie Hearn matchroom move. They're getting the most return for their fighter in the safest possible way, which I totally understand, and I'm not saying that's a criticism of Eddie Hearn, but the biggest fight out there on the table is George Groves. It's the fight that Carl really needs to prove that he is the better fighter than Groves, and Groves to prove that, you know, he may well have stopped or beaten Froch had he been given the opportunity and not stopped early. It's an interesting fight. I can see why Groves thinks there's no other option for Froch, and I can see why Froch doesn't want to give that fight to Groves, but public demand is absolutely clear that they want that rematch before any entertainment of a Chavez fight or any other fights. Let's not forget, Chavez has done little to nothing at super middleweight. He's just a name. He wasn't a great middleweight, and he's, you know, basically just a money cow for a cash cow, sorry, for Carl Froch to get a big payday over there in the States, you know, or maybe even Mexico if he goes there, but he'd probably be Vegas. I just think it's the wrong fight. I don't think it should be sold as a big fight. I don't think it should be even really entertained in the press. I mean, it's a fight, okay, but, and Carl Froch, yes, he deserves a big payday to maybe end his career and whatever. Yeah, I understand that. I'm a big supporter of Carl Froch. But for me, there's only one fight that can happen, and that is the Groves rematch. Make that happen spring, summertime, summer more likely now. And then go on to Chavez fight, close the door on your career and walk away a very rich and happy man. And just to end the wrap up, Yamaguchi Facao, the Olympic silver medalist, he lost to Ryota Murata in the middleweight division. He dropped and eventually beat Anthony Ogogo in the semi-finals. For me, out of all the middleweights at the Olympics last year, and I was there at the Olympics working at the time, I managed to see all the fights. He, for me, was the one that I was most excited about turning pro, Facao, because he just had that pro style. He definitely didn't have the typical international amateur style. Well, he had his pro debut last night. I think he's been signed up by Top Rank, but he had his debut in his home of Brazil, and it was called a disqualification after the first round. I think both guys hit after the bell. The referee then, rather than warning them or deducting points, he called it a disqualification of both fighters. So that goes down as a no contest on the record. Both guys absolutely disgusted with that, and they'll be hoping to rematch that. But what a sad start to his career, really. I mean, it's a no contest, doesn't really have much effect on, you know, you know, where he's going to go with his career. It's not a loss, and he wasn't exposed or anything, but still he must be frustrated because he would have liked a nice big win on his opening debut. A great fighter there. He's got a brother as well, let's not forget, who I think is still amateur and is hoping for Rio 2016. That would be, you know, a fantastic place for him to fight in his home country at his home Olympics. That concludes my Sunday results wrap up. Don't forget to share, like, comment on this video. Stay tuned to the channel because we're going to have plenty of content coming up. Don't forget we had all that Canelo Angulo stuff that Radio Raheem so kindly been getting for us out in the States. He's going to be continuing to go out to the biggest press conferences out there. We're going to have the Frank Warren stuff from this week. There's plenty going on. February is going to be a big month for British boxing, so stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, stay safe, fight fans in the meantime, and I'll see you next week on the Sunday results wrap up with me, Dylan Cox for secondsapp.com.